US number 31, calling McMurdo.
The history of the Thing spans several thousand years, but the recorded history goes as far back as 1121 AD. This story was called The Thing, the Northman Nightmare, where Vikings encounter the alien and trap it beneath the ice. Thousands of years later, after the events of the films, the 1991 comic The Thing from Another World revives MacReady, who faces the alien again after it assimilates a US Marine. In The Thing from Another World Climate of Fear, the story moves to an Argentinian base, where MacReady battles the Thing alongside a new group, which leads to startling revelations. The 1993 comic The Thing from Another World Eternal Vows escalates the threat by placing the alien in a densely populated island town, with MacReady pursuing it. The comic Questionable Research, which we're going to explore today, serves as a sequel to the 1982 film. However, it diverges from other Thing comics, creating its own narrative path. This story begins when a team of scientists arrive to recover biomatter from the destroyed US Outpost 31. Their mission sets off a series of events that rekindle the alien's threat and shows the Thing's terrifying ability to survive, adapt, and assimilate. Let's now focus on the chilling narrative of Questionable Research and how its story unfolds. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
What is it?
Part 1. The charred ruins of US Outpost 31 sat silently as another helicopter arrived, this one carrying a team of researchers rather than Norwegian or American military personnel. The once thriving outpost was now a desolate expanse littered with the frozen remains of things scattered across its perimeter. As the team disembarked, their leader, Douglas, quickly divided them into two groups. One was tasked with salvaging valuable data, files, photos, videos, and audio recordings, while the other focused on collecting biological samples from the grotesque remnants of the things. The tension among the team was palpable, and their unease deepened when they came face to face with one of the semi-assimilated things for the first time. The horror in their expressions was unmistakable, despite their prior understanding of how the alien functioned. Hooper, a member of the team, struggled to lift one of the larger frozen specimens into the helicopter. The alien's size made it cumbersome, and as he attempted to maneuver it, a piece of its frozen fingers snapped off and fell unnoticed. The detached fragment made it on board, but the team remained unaware of the incident. This seemingly minor mishap would set off a chain of events that could threaten humanity itself. Hooper wasn't to blame, as the alien's massive form was challenging to handle, but the mere concept of the thing, its ability to shapeshift into living organisms, assimilate them, and turn them into killers, was deeply unsettling. Hooper couldn't shake his unease. How could anyone feel secure knowing such a creature existed? Douglas, a steady and pragmatic leader, reassured Hooper, telling him not to worry. Once they reached the safety of their research vessel, the Donacek, the thing would pose no further threat. Yet Douglas himself was far from carefree. He anxiously awaited the return of his wife Barbara and her assistant Arlene, who were combing through the ruins for vital information. His priority was to leave the cursed outpost as soon as possible. Barbara and Arlene eventually emerged, their arms full of salvaged data, and the team departed for the Donacek. On the helicopter, Barbara and Douglas exchanged accounts of their findings. Barbara, clearly exhilarated, shared her success. She had discovered personal notes, videotapes, and most notably, a simulation model accompanied by detailed records of infection tests. Whoever had created this trove of data had clearly hidden it, ensuring it survived the destruction of Outpost 31. She also uncovered an audio log locked in a drawer, belonging to none other than MacReady, a name familiar to anyone acquainted with the terrifying events at the outpost. Barbara and Douglas were thrilled by the discovery, discussing it animatedly. Their excitement, however, grated on Hooper, who couldn't understand their casual tone when so many lives had been lost. "You're talking about it like it's some kind of cutesy critter," he said, visibly disturbed. "And those men, they're dead for God's sake. Can't we at least show a little respect?" For Hooper, the proximity to something so dangerous was overwhelming. He didn't know that MacReady and Childs had survived in another timeline, as this story diverged from other Thing narratives. For all he knew, everyone at Outpost 31 had perished. His reluctance to share space with such a deadly creature was understandable. The helicopter finally arrived at the Donacek, and the team began transferring the alien specimens specimen into a nitrogen tank for containment. In this particular timeline, the narrative included female characters, a departure from John Carpenter's original film with its all-male cast. Among the women on the Donachek was Marion, whose admiration for Douglas didn't go unnoticed. Barbara, sensing Marion's interest, was visibly annoyed by her presence. Meanwhile, a far more pressing threat was emerging unnoticed. The small fragment of the thing that had broken off during the salvage mission began to stir. It sprouted legs and started moving, seeking its first prey. The fragment found a rat, assimilating it with horrifying efficiency. Now embodied as the rat thing, it continued its hunt and encountered an unsuspecting crew member aboard the Donachek. The creature revealed its true nature, unfurling tentacles ending in gaping maws, and began the gruesome process of assimilating the crew member. The tension aboard the Donachek was thick as the unknown menace grew. While the researchers focused on studying their findings and preparing to analyze the frozen alien, the rat thing's actions threatened to spiral into chaos. The juxtaposition of scientific curiosity and the lurking danger exemplified the core terror of the thing. What began as a mission to understand and contain the alien's capabilities was already veering towards catastrophe. The researchers remained unaware that their encounter with the alien was far from over, and their quest for knowledge could cost them dearly. Part 2. The second part of the comic opens with the crew of the Donachek conducting another experiment on the thing. They introduce an innocent rabbit to a small part of the alien that they have defrosted. Their method involves allowing the thing to begin assimilating its prey, but freezing it with liquid nitrogen before the transformation can complete. With each experiment, they extend the duration of the assimilation slightly, pushing the limits of safety in their pursuit of knowledge. During this particular trial, Barbara listens to the audio log of MacReady, immersing herself in the harrowing account of the events at Outpost 31. Elsewhere on the Donachek, Marion pores over Blair's data. She marvels at the clarity and precision of Blair's findings, recognizing him as the first to truly grasp the scale of the threat posed by the thing. According to Blair, Earth had 27,000 hours from the point of the first infection before complete global assimilation. Marion, however, points out a critical oversight in Blair's calculations. He failed to account for the alien's differing behavior in warm versus cold climates. Unlike the frigid conditions at Outpost 31, where the thing remained somewhat sluggish, it would thrive in temperate climates. She estimates that in such an environment, the time for complete assimilation would shrink to a mere 3,000 hours. Marion further asserts that humanity would only have a fighting chance in the first 100 hours of exposure. Beyond that window, the survival of humanity, and likely the rest of Earth's fauna, would be doomed. She warns that the Donachek's crew lack of caution could potentially trigger a global catastrophe. Hooper, already uneasy, becomes even more paranoid after hearing Marion's grim analysis. He pleads with Douglas to halt the experiments immediately, arguing that the thing is a ticking time bomb capable of destroying all life on Earth. Hooper approaches Douglas with reason, emphasizing the magnitude of the risk. Mistakes are inevitable, he argues, and just one could unleash an unstoppable chain reaction. Hooper proposes not only ending their work aboard the Donachek, but also returning to Outpost 31 to ensure no trace of the thing remains. Douglas, however, dismisses Hooper's concerns. He insists that scientific inquiry must proceed unfettered by moral considerations. To Douglas, morals are an impediment, clouding judgment and contaminating conclusions. His conviction that there is no room for ethics in research leads him to outright reject Hooper's argument. Hooper, exasperated, accuses Douglas of abandoning both scientific rigor and common sense. Their escalating confrontation boils over into a physical altercation. In the scuffle, Hooper slaps Douglas, and the two exchange blows. Amid the chaos, they accidentally knock over the case containing the frozen thing from their latest experiment. The scene ends on a dramatic cliffhanger, leaving readers with a sense of foreboding as the implications of their carelessness begin to take shape. The clash between Hooper and Douglas is more than a personal dispute. It highlights the tension between two philosophical approaches to science. Douglas represents the belief that knowledge must be pursued at any cost, viewing the thing as a groundbreaking discovery that could one day equip humanity to fight back against such threats. For him, the potential benefits outweigh the dangers. Hooper, on the other hand, embodies caution, arguing that the pursuit of knowledge cannot come at the expense of safety or ethics. He views the thing as an existential threat, one that demands prudence above all else. This debate mirrors the broader challenges faced in scientific and technological advancement. Douglas's perspective reflects the belief that progress is worth risks, while Hooper's stance underscores the need for careful, responsible action. The narrative doesn't explicitly take sides, but invites readers to reflect on the balance between ambition and caution. As their conflict unfolds, the story delves into the moral and practical dilemmas inherent in dealing with a discovery as dangerous as the Thing. The stakes could not be higher, and the crew's next actions may determine not only their survival, but the fate of the entire planet. Part 3. The crew of the Donacek acted quickly after the box containing the frozen thing broke open. Douglas handed out gloves and directed the team to collect the scattered biomatter before it could thaw. They managed to refreeze the fragments, but Marion's research revealed the true danger. Even a single cell of the thing could cause infection, spreading through the bloodstream and leading to full assimilation. The cells could enter through the smallest cuts or bruises, infecting the body within minutes. Once the bloodstream was compromised, saving the person would become impossible. Marion further concluded that the thing assimilates the brain last, likely due to the organ's complexity. This delay meant an infected person might remain unaware until assimilation was nearly complete, leaving no chance for recovery. The uncertainty about who might already be infected loomed over the crew. While the team focused on containment, Carl, a crew member, discovered a makeshift spaceship in the hangar. He found Arlene constructing it from salvaged helicopter parts. Arlene, however, was no longer herself. The Thing, which had assimilated a crew member via the rat thing, had taken her form. When Carl stumbled upon her secret, the Arlene thing revealed its monstrous, tentacled body and attacked him. The assault happened so swiftly that Carl couldn't alert the others. Back in the lab, the researchers realized Carl and Arlene were missing and hadn't been tested for infection. Douglas dismissed the concerns, insisting they were uninvolved in the recent mishap. His dismissal was interrupted by gunshots echoing from the hangar. Marion, Douglas, and Hooper rushed to investigate and were confronted with their worst fear. The Thing had escaped its containment. Arlene Thing was in the process of assimilating Carl, who had likely fired the shots in a futile attempt to defend himself. Hooper, overcome with anger, blamed Douglas for the situation and lunged at him. In his rage, Hooper made a fatal mistake. He turned his back on Arlene Thing, leaving himself vulnerable. The creature attacked with its sharp tentacles, and Hooper became the very thing he had feared. Marion and Douglas fled, retreating to the lab. They found it abandoned. Barbara and another scientist were missing, and all the samples of the thing were gone. The disaster traced back to a single, seemingly small mistake. In Part 1, Hooper's mishandling of the frozen alien had caused a piece to break off. That fragment had infected a rat, which led to the assimilation of a crew member, and finally, Arlene. What had begun as a careless oversight had now escalated into chaos, with the thing gaining a foothold aboard the Donacek. Every decision the crew made seemed to deepen their peril, showing how fragile their control over the situation truly was. Part 4. Douglas frantically called out for Barbara, but she was nowhere to be found. Marion urged him to focus on finding a safe place to regroup and plan their next move. Before they could act, Arlene Thing erupted through the deck, attacking Marion. In a horrifying moment, Arlene Thing assimilated her, leaving Douglas as its next target. Thinking quickly, Douglas grabbed a vat of liquid nitrogen and hurled it at the creature, freezing it temporarily and buying enough time to escape. As Douglas fled through the vessel, he encountered Barbara. She accused him of being infected and aimed a flare gun at him. Douglas denied being a thing, but Barbara wasn't convinced. She gave him an ultimatum. "You have 5 seconds to prove it, or you're getting a flare in your guts," she said. The narrative made it clear that Douglas was not one of the things, but there was mounting tension over whether Barbara herself might be infected. To prove himself, Douglas used one of the portable testing kits, heating his blood, which did not react. Satisfied, Barbara admitted she had killed another scientist, Tamara, claiming Tamara was the thing. Now it appeared Douglas and Barbara were the only survivors, but Barbara had yet to take the test herself. Despite the rising tension, Douglas remained pragmatic. He and Barbara decided to leave the vessel immediately, agreeing their best chance of survival was to reach the mainland. Douglas asked Barbara to pilot the helicopter, though she hadn't flown one in years. Barbara hesitated but ultimately agreed, realizing it was their only option. As she prepared to board the helicopter, Douglas stopped her, taking the flare gun and insisting she undergo the test. Barbara resisted, trying to avoid it, but Douglas refused to relent. Under pressure, she finally submitted to the test. The result confirmed Douglas's fears. Barbara was the thing. Barbara transformed into a monstrous form, far larger and more grotesque than before. She attacked Douglas, who narrowly evaded her. "I tried to do this the easy way, Douglas," she said, her voice cold and alien. Few things in the series have spoken with such clarity, adding to the moment's unsettling nature. Douglas seized his chance, shooting the helicopter's fuel tank as Barbara Thing continued to mutate. The explosion destroyed the creature and set the vessel, Donacek, ablaze. Realizing the fire would soon reach the ship's fuel tanks, Douglas acted quickly. He found no time to search for a lifeboat and instead threw himself into the icy sea. Moments later, the vessel exploded, sending a massive fireball into the sky. Adrift in the freezing water, Douglas clung to debris, speaking aloud to a nearby seagull. He acknowledged his bleak situation, estimating he had no more than 20 minutes to live in the harsh cold. As he lamented his fate, he noticed the seagull's glowing red eyes. Horror dawned on him as he realized the thing had infected the bird. The seagull flapped its wings and flew away, leaving Douglas alone in the water, resigned to his grim end. Douglas's plight was the result of his own hubris. Had he heeded Hooper's warnings earlier, the disaster aboard the Donacek might have been avoided. Driven by his desire to explore and control something he barely understood, Douglas underestimated the ancient and insidious nature of the thing. This alien organism, millions of years old, had traveled the universe, infecting and assimilating entire worlds. Its survival instincts and ability to blend seamlessly made it nearly unstoppable. Douglas's attempt to play God led to his downfall, and his decisions allowed the thing to secure a pathway to the outside world. The comic draws parallels between the thing and other organisms from science fiction, such as the Long One from James Gunn's Slither. Both entities embody a primal drive to spread infection and assimilation, leaving devastation in their wake. As the seagull flew off, carrying the thing's infection to an uncertain future, Douglas lay in the water, awaiting his inevitable fate. Marvelous verdict. Should you read the comic? Questionable research started off very strong in terms of its setting and character development. We get to see some very authentic and realistic arguments on the way scientists carry out scientific experiments and how Douglas behaved like a not-so-crazy yet mad scientist. He had no regard for the repercussions of his actions, but Hooper, on the other hand, was a sentimental man who failed to really convince Douglas from stopping the experiment, or anyone else for that matter. There was absolutely no need to put a love triangle in the story, but having said that, the story is pretty efficient as a standalone The Thing comic, and it wouldn't hurt seeing something of this sort as an episode of The Thing TV show. Speaking of which, did you know that in 2005, the Sci-Fi Channel had planned a 4-hour miniseries sequel to The Thing? The story was to follow a team of Russian scientists who find the corpses of MacReady and Childs. However, Universal opted for making a live-action prequel film instead, and that project was realized in 2011. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.